Hey Chloe, I think today is a good day for book club.
I think every day is a good day for book club, Kaatje.
Welcome to our podcast where we talk about the books that we buddy read. Since 2020, we've read over 150 books together.
We're going to talk about what we like, don't like, and everything in between. Spoilers abound, so listener beware.
And today we're going to be talking about a very popular author, although I don't think this is one of his most popular books, but we're going to be chatting about Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. This is so far a standalone novel, as far as I know. He hasn't written any sequels to it, but it exists in the same larger world that he writes most of his fantasy novels in the Cosmere. And Chloe and I have both read some books by Brandon Sanderson before. This is my sixth Sanderson, I believe, because we read the Mistborn trilogy together, Mistborn, Well of Ascension, and Hero of Ages. We also read Tress of the Emerald Sea together. I read Way of Kings by myself last year, and so now this is my sixth, but I think you've read more than I have.
I think we have the same list.
Oh, really?
Yes, I also read Way of Kings, but separately, but it's my husband's favorite. That series. I actually have not made it past the first one yet.
Oh, you haven't read the second one? I thought for sure you would have.
No, I think I need to read the first one again because when at the time I read it, I wasn't super into it, but I love all his other ones so much that I feel like it was kind of a timing situation. So I need to start again, and then I think I would get into two from there.
I kind of felt the same way about Way of Kings, honestly. I couldn't
Thank
I
you.
couldn't quite get into it as much as some of his other ones. I just feel like it's the most sprawling world maybe, so he had more setup to do. But at the same time, I thought his other books were just so much better at grabbing you a little bit faster and just having a little bit of a quicker pacing that I enjoyed more. And I just liked the characters in some of his other books more than Way of Kings. So this might be a hot take, but Way of Kings has been my least favorite of all of the Brandon Sandersons that I've read up to this point, and maybe the sequels will convince me that the Stormlight Archive is where it's at and that it's really his best series, because I feel like that is the one that is most often lauded, but at this point it is my least favorite.
It's mine too, and I just struggle because it was the same for me. There was so much setup, whereas in Warbreaker there was setup, but things were happening at the same time. Way of Kings felt like I was trudging through the mud trying to get through it, you know?
Yeah. Also, Way of Kings, not to turn this into a Way of Kings podcast, but Way of Kings has a lot of war in it, and war stories are not always my favorite to read. Whereas with something like Warbreaker, even though it has that in the title, this is more about the political intrigue leading up to a potential war. And that kind of politicking is just a lot more interesting to me than reading about battle scenes.
I feel like it gives you more. I feel like it gives me more, I won't speak for everyone, to get invested in, like the characters and the relationships and who's lying to who and what's going on. Whereas battle scene is like X character slices off Y character's head and then we move on. It's all bloody, everyone's dying. It's just not my favorite thing to read.
Yeah, I mean, if that one was my least favorite, Warbreaker is definitely towards the top of my Brandon Sanderson rankings, because not to give away, I guess, too much of our general thoughts, but I really, really, really liked this.
It was so good.
Okay, do you want to just...
And with that,
I don't know
we're
why
done.
I'm hiding the ball. I don't know why I'm hiding the ball. Maybe we should just actually say our star ratings and what we thought about it, because I gave it 5 stars.
I gave it 4 stars, so
Okay.
I was right up there with you. End of podcast. Thank you for listening.
All right, thank you so much. Goodbye. Don't forget to
No, don't
follow
leave.
us. Oh, wait. Okay, I should say before we get into the plot and actually talk about what we liked about it, if you are enjoying this episode so far, be sure to follow us, rate us 5 stars. That really helps us out. Helps more people to find us. We also have an Instagram and a TikTok at A Good Day for Book Club Pod. And if you have questions, comments, requests, or thoughts about this episode, you can send us an email. Where, Chloe?
At agooddayforbookclubpod@gmail.com.
Nice. Oh my gosh, sorry. I'm drinking an energy drink right now because it's been a long day and I feel like it's coming out in a silly way.
It's 8 p.m. God bless you.
I want to make sure I'm energized for our conversation about this very
I
good book.
respect.
This book follows Ciri and Vivenna. They are both princesses of a kingdom called Idris, and Vivenna for her whole life has been engaged, betrothed to the god king of Hallandren, and she's known that once she turns a certain age, I think 21,
Sounds right.
something like that, that she has to go to Hallandren and marry the God King and leave her family and leave all that she knows. And her whole life, she's kind of been training to be a good wife and a good queen to Hallandren. But at the beginning of the book, her father, the king, decides, actually, I don't want to send Vivenna. I'm going to send my youngest daughter, Ciri, instead, and she's going to marry the God King. Which the whole motivation for this just seemed to be that he liked Vivenna so much and he felt like sending her would be sending her to her doom. To which I said, this is some flagrant favoritism or Siri, but that's kind of just where the story kicks off. Did you have any insight as to whether the king had different motivations, or was it literally just favoritism?
It felt like just favoritism to me, particularly because in Ciri's like opening scene where we meet her for the first time, it opens with a sentence about how she's used to being unremarkable, and she's okay with it, and she likes that she kind of has a little bit more anonymity than her oldest sister, but just the way she's introduced and the way she's described as like the youngest who can do whatever she wants because she's not betrothed to the God King, and I just felt like it was really setting it up like, oh, the youngest, yeah, we have her, she just kind of does whatever. And then when he does the little trade and sends the youngest sister instead, it felt like, oh, so you just don't care as much about your youngest daughter.
Yeah, she's very free-spirited, Siri,
Yeah.
and that is in stark contrast to the very kind of buttoned up, serious, polite, modest Vivenna. So for comparing these two kingdoms of
Mm-hmm.
Hallandren and Idris, Idris seems to be a very religious country based on kind of the way that Vivenna talks about it, and a very modest country. I guess they're both very religious countries, but the Idris country has a monotheistic religion where they worship this one god that is god of all the colors, whereas in Hallandren, they worship multiple gods who kind of live on Earth with them. And the gods that live on Earth with them are people who died and came back to life in order to fulfill some kind of good for the world. There's a big emphasis on color being related to magic in this book, and the way that depending on how much power a person has, colors will be brighter or dimmer around them. And so all of the swears or all of the curse words in this book are kind of related to colors, which I thought was kind of fun.
I really liked this concept because I couldn't think of anything else that I had read it in. And I will say, when we first read just the description of the book, I was a little apprehensive because it felt a little bit like a term I've used before, fantasy salad, where everything was kind of tossed in. And I had to read the description like a few times before I felt like I really understood what I was getting into. But as we were reading it and it was being described in the context of the book itself, I really liked all of the different colors and the way that those colors tied into people's power. And it's described as their breath, which is given to
Mhm.
them. Well, you're born with breath, like a single breath.
Yes. Which
Um,
seemed kind of like your soul, the way that they spoke
yes,
about it.
but people can gift you their breath. For example, people would take their children to give their breath to a god, and the family would then be repaid for giving their breath to a god, and then the god becomes more powerful because they have more breath, which I thought was so interesting because as they have more breaths, their colors become brighter and it ties
Mhm.
in together. They have more power, they have more colors, everything is brighter. Just the concept of that was so interesting to me because I was trying to picture in some of the scenes like people who are described as not having any breath, they're like lower class, if you will. They're just not considered as highly as, for example, gods who have many breaths. And the contrasting colors in the description was so interesting to me, how they're like very dull, very drab when they don't have it. Everything around them is kind of gray. But as they achieve what are called the different heightenings, which is levels of power we can get into, but they have more breaths, they achieve higher heightenings. They see more colors, even like different shades of the same color. For example, there's a red building, but someone with a lot of breath will see 10 different shades of red in what looks like just a plain red building. And all of this was so fascinating to me because I was like, I want to see different colors in this world.
Yeah, it made the setting of this book, I think, very, very vivid, very, very real, really easy to visualize in a way that I appreciated. I
Yeah.
feel like not every book is that good at painting this setting so clearly.
I'll give him that. He paints a great setting, except for maybe Way of Kings.
Way of Kings is
Anyway.
catching some strays today. I will say, after I finished Way of Kings, I was going to originally move straight to Words of Radiance, but then I saw somewhere on some like reading guide, because everybody's always making Brandon Sanderson reading order reading guides. I saw someone say that there were Easter eggs for this book in Words of Radiance, and so now I'm interested whenever I eventually get around to that, being able to see who shows up or what shows up. Anyway, so yes, so the colors I feel like also illustrate the cultural differences between Hallandren and Idris, because Idris is a very, again, modest, monotheistic religious country. And that focus, like you mentioned, on the colors and whether people have more color around them or less color around them, depending on the amount of power that they have, is really, I guess, kind of related to the cultural differences between Hallandren and Idris, because in Idris, it's kind of looked down upon to use other people's breath and to give away your breath. And so that whole country, there's not a lot of color there. It's very, like you said, dull and drab compared to Hallandren. They wear brown clothing and gray clothing, and they don't draw a lot of attention to themselves. Whereas in Hallandren, they wear a lot more revealing clothing. They're much more free in the way that they express themselves in terms of their clothing. They'll wear really, really bright colors, and you can tell a lot of the times in different crowds that people are trying to outdress one another and wear the brightest colors that they can to try to really convey how much power and influence that they have in the community. Because in Hallandren, the level of breath that you have not only denotes the amount of power that you have, but also kind of your place in society, because you're automatically going to be more powerful socially and politically if you do have more breath.
I kind of pictured Hallandren like the capital in the Hunger Games, to
Oh,
be
really?
honest. Like the vibe of the crazy outfits
Other
and
crazy
the crazy.
outfits.
And anyway, that was kind of how
I
I
can
pictured
see
it.
that. I can see that. I also pictured it tropical too, though, because they talked about how like warm and jungly it was there compared to the mountains of Idris.
The way that two places were described felt very separate, not just in the religious and the color aspects, but also just in setting, like you were saying, because it was very warm and very dry in Hallandren, but back in Idris, when Ciri describes it, she talks about the mountains and the forests and the jungles around it and how it's all kind of this beautiful setting, and she has to describe what mountains look like to the God King because he's never seen them.
Oh, I'm so excited to talk about the God King. I love him.
Which I'm like, how far apart are they? Because
I
mountains are
know.
quite large. You could see them for a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah, I feel like in the way that they talk about these two kingdoms, it seems like they should be pretty close together because they're, on the verge of war. I would assume that they're geographically not far, but like you said, the like climate wise, they seem like they should be on opposite sides of the world.
I want a map of the Cosmere.
So getting back on track, Ciri goes to Hallandren, and she has kind of a culture shock just because it's so different from anything that she's ever experienced. Her maids and attendants and like people who work in the palace don't really care about just like marching into her bathroom while she's bathing, because they just like don't have any concept of modesty or of nakedness being something to be embarrassed about. She ends up knowing that her duty there is to provide an heir. So she is supposed to get pregnant with the God King's child so that they can have the next ruler for the kingdom. But every night she goes to the God King's room, and the royal advisor, is that his title? Bluefingers?
Yeah.
The royal advisor tells her, what you're going to do is you're going to go to this room. To be respectful, don't look the God King in the eye, don't speak, don't do anything. Just take off your clothes and kneel on the ground, lay your forehead on the ground. And then once he tells you that you can get up, then you can get up. But like until then, don't even look at him because that's disrespectful and he will kill you. And so Siri is like, oh my God, this is intense, but all right. She goes into the room, does as was told, takes off all her clothes, kneels on the ground. The God King is in the corner of the room, and he's the kings, or not the kings, the gods in this book basically are just regular people, but taller and stronger and more powerful. And the God King is the most powerful of them all. He has the most breath. But he's just in the corner of the room watching her. And she's on the ground and she keeps wondering, when is he gonna do something? Hopefully it happens soon. But hours and hours and hours go by and she ends up falling asleep on the ground. And then the next day, the same thing happens again and again and again and again. And so every night she's just falling asleep naked on the floor because the God King's not doing anything. And she's too, I guess, intimidated from what people have told her to do anything. This whole situation was very, I don't know, like surprising to me. It's not the direction that I expected this to go. But what was your first impression of what was going on with the God King Sisebron?
I thought it was funny at first because when Bluefingers tells her, don't speak, don't look at him, don't touch him, don't do anything, she asks the very valid question, well, how am I supposed to get pregnant if we can't touch or like have any kind of interaction? And he's basically like, you'll figure it out, which makes no sense. That's not how that works. But anyway, I thought it was so funny then when she got there and she lay down and nothing happened, because I was not expecting it either. There's so much buildup that the God King is like inherently evil. He's very cruel. He doesn't care about anyone but himself. He's very selfish. That's like this persona that's around him. So I was expecting it to be like a really uncomfortable encounter or a really cruel encounter, like him to mock where she was from or things like that. And then for him to just say nothing and not acknowledge her, not even get up. And then when she wakes up in the morning, he's just gone. I thought that was wild. And honestly, for her, probably really frustrating because she's fallen asleep on the floor every night and that can't be comfortable. So the night that she is like, gets mad at him and is like, are you going to do anything? And then I think like crawls into the bed and sleeps there instead. I was like, good for you. Good for you.
You know, during that scene where she like yells at him and that's the first time that she's actually spoken to him and they've actually looked at each other, I was listening to the audiobook and as soon as that sentence was said, my phone started ringing because my boyfriend was calling me. And so it was like the most extreme cliffhanger that she was like, why don't you do anything? And then it was like hard cut. Hard cut off.
Stop. Wait to see what happens. Yeah. Post phone call.
It was just funny. But the other thing that we should mention too is that with the breaths, in order to use them, you have to speak a command and you have to speak very clearly and know what you want your breath to do, because the breath can be used to animate different objects or even like dead bodies or even animals, just anything that has once been alive. So a lot of times people will reanimate clothing or different tools, but the important thing is that you have to be able to speak to use your breath. Eventually, Siri discovers that the God King does not have a tongue. It was cut out when he was very young. And so although he is the most powerful person in all of Hallandren and all of the world as far as we know, he can't actually use his power because he doesn't have a tongue to be able to speak.
Which I was shocked by and also thought was so cruel to cut out somebody's tongue. And I mean, they have their reasons. They say they don't want this one person to be able to use this much power, which I felt like was a little conflicting because they want a God King who embodies this level of power, but they don't want him to actually have the power. They want to stop the power from being used, which basically makes him a figurehead, in my opinion.
Yeah,
but
it does make him a figurehead, not only of their political system, but also of their religion, because if he is meant to be kind of this figure that they worship and he's not able to use his power, it kind of undercuts his role as a god.
Part of why the God King has not initiated attempting to have an heir with Ciri is because the high priests basically stopped his education when he was very young and he doesn't understand or know a lot of things, including how to make a baby. Basically all of his knowledge and kind of understanding of morality in the world is based on stories that his mom read to him when he was little. So like fairy tales, children's stories, that's kind of how he views good and evil in the world. And so we come to find out that part of why he's not initiating anything or trying to be romantic is because he really does not understand it. And Ciri's like, that's fine for now. I don't really want to have a baby right now. So
That's fine for now. Yeah, but again, it's just such a drastic difference from what we were led to believe about the God King. He was this scary figure in Ciri's mind, and in reality, his level of knowledge is that of a child. But he does learn very, very fast because Ciri does, once she realizes that he can't speak, she starts to teach him to read and to write, and he picks it up super quickly. So the two of them are able to communicate through writing to one another because they figure out that the high priests have been eavesdropping on them. And there's a while that Ciri will do kind of an easy A charade where she'll be like bouncing on the bed and moaning and trying to get the high priests to think that they are trying to have an heir or make an heir, but in reality they're just like writing back and forth to each other and communicating, and she's learning about just how much control the high priests have over Sisebron and how much he really doesn't know about the world. And meanwhile he's asking her about her life in Hallandren, her life in Hallandren and her life in Idris, and slowly over the course of the book they fall in love, and I love them.
They're the cutest. I was
They're
very
so
happy
cute.
about them.
Yeah, I really, really liked them as a couple, especially her being sarcastic and him like not really understanding it and then kind of learning her sense of humor and then trying it himself. It was just very, very pure and sweet.
A very wholesome relationship in what I expected to be a very unhealthy and unbalanced one. So it was a lovely surprise.
Eventually, they also find out some secrets, or Ciri specifically kind of finds out some secrets about the high priests and how they want Ciri to have an heir, but Ciri finds out that if she does have an heir, then Sisebron will die. And Ciri likely will also die.
We should also address the fact that they call her Vessel, and it drove me nuts.
They
It's
never,
very
I don't
upsetting.
think anyone in the palace ever calls her Ciri. It's always Vessel.
No, it's exclusively Vessel. And
She's
I
the vessel for the God King heir.
hated
Ooh.
it. Hated it.
Yes.
And
Well,
now
there-
back to the big sister. Just kidding.
I was gonna say there is a while where they're like, Ciri, we know that you're not actually like doing anything to try to have a baby, and she's like, he won't look at me or touch me. What am I supposed to do? And it's at that point that she starts, bouncing on the bed and doing her charade. And these scenes were so funny because the God King would just like watch her and be like, "What are you doing?"
The first time she did it, I felt like so much secondhand embarrassment, like imagining bouncing on the bed and making these moaning sounds while someone is just watching you, looking at you like you're absolutely insane, because it has to look absolutely insane to him. And it's like,
and I'm sure
I
it did
felt a lot
not
of
clear up
embarrassment.
his questions about like how babies are made, but it was really funny to read.
Probably added a lot, in fact, to his understanding of the
Maybe.
situation.
I don't know.
And we find out later, the first few times she's in there, they're not only eavesdropping at the wall, they are watching, like, through little peepholes to make sure that she doesn't try to assassinate the king, which, I guess logically she's from a different country. They want to make sure he's safe, but how violating. Like, I was just so appalled on her behalf, like, especially because she values modesty so much, and to find out that people are just creeping around listening and watching, like, how gross.
So, jumping to the other sister, who I would say is even more modest than Ciri. She's much more devout at worshipping Astra, which is the god of Idris, or the god of colors. And Vivenna was the person who was supposed to marry the God King. She's the eldest daughter. She, at the beginning of this, is feeling pretty conflicted about Ciri being sent instead of her because she's felt like she was trained for this, and even though it's dangerous, it was kind of her burden to take on and not Ciri's. She decides to go to Hallandren on a rescue mission and try to save Ciri. So she sets off with her friend Parlin, who early in the book I thought was much older than he really is, because there is later sort of a romantic tension between them, I guess, kind of an insinuation that their fathers wanted them to be together, even though Vivenna was betrothed to the God King. But up until this point, I had been picturing Parlin as a middle-aged man, so I was like, oh, I gotta make an alteration in the fan casting in my Mind movie. But she sets off with Parlin, who is around her age.
In my Mind movie. I thought he was like an old man too. At first I was really grossed out by the like marriage insinuation, and then I realized no, they must just be the same age or close to.
Okay, that's actually very comforting to me that you also thought that he was old.
No, he's described as like an old man. I don't know why, but
Oh,
he
really?
sounds old, he feels old, the vibe is old. I don't know.
I'm gonna
I
look
don't
it
know.
up. I'm Googling how old is Parlin Warbreaker. It says this is the Google AI overview, so who knows how accurate this is, but it says Parlin is described as being a few years Vivenna's senior. Vivenna is 22 years old during most of the novel, placing Parlin's age in his mid-20s, likely 24 to 26, a known companion to Vivenna who grow up in the Idrian Palace. So Vivenna and Parlin go to Hallandren to try to save Ciri, and their plan, or Vivenna's plan, as soon as she gets there, is to contact this man named Lemix, who has been a spy for Idris in Hallandren, to kind of see what he knows, if she can get contacts from him about how to safely get to the palace, how to safely navigate Hallandren. But she soon finds out, this is, I believe, in their first meeting, that Lemix is very, very, very ill, and he ends up actually dying pretty early on in the book. And so Vivenna is out of luck in terms of using him as a resource.
But she lucks out in that he had hired some mercenaries to assist him in his dealings, spy work, and
Yeah.
etc. Their names are Tonk Fa and what's the other guy's name?
Denth.
Denth, thank you. And then there's a third who we don't meet immediately. Her name is Jules. She
Yeah,
enters later.
she actually was not as big of a character as I expected her to be.
There was a lot of buildup around her, and then I felt like she was there and then not.
Yeah.
So
So
kind of
yeah,
forgettable.
Dance is kind of the main guy, Tonkfa is kind of the muscle, and then Jules comes later. But Jules also has a particular henchman, I guess, named Claude, who is a reanimated dead person who again acts sort of as muscle for them.
And they call those the lifeless. It's
Hmm.
something that people do is they take the bodies of deceased people and give them breath to awaken them and give them commands. And when you command an army of lifeless or a group of lifeless, one lifeless, however many it may be, you have to have like words that control them. It's kind of the phrase that gets them to do your bidding.
Yeah, like a password phrase.
And it's very important because it's the only thing that will make them do what you're telling them to do. Basically, you have to turn them on and off, is how I
Yeah.
thought of it. That will come into play later, but backing up a little bit, Viviana ends up working with these mercenaries because she doesn't know anybody else except for Parlin, who is not an old man, and they agree that while they're there, they will begin doing some kind of recon into this war that is starting to be rumblings that it's going to be breaking out at some point, and they'll kind of start talking to people from Idris who are living in Hallandren and getting their feelings and kind of put Viviana in front of them as like, I'm here, what's going on, tell me your problems, how can I help you, what promises can I make, kind of using her, because she's a princess, to give promises, I felt like, for what they could do to make the situation better for Idrins living in Hallandren.
Yeah, I felt like during this whole interlude, Vivenna got very distracted from her goal of saving Ciri because she really kind of goes on a detour where she's really focused on this brewing war between Hallandren and Idris, and conceivably the marriage between someone from the royal family of Idris and someone from Hallandren, or the leader of Hallandren, was supposed to bring some level of peace between the two countries. But the fact that the king sent the youngest daughter and not the daughter that was promised means that there's still some tension between Hallandren and Idris. But in these scenes, I was like, Vivenna, I thought the whole point of you being here was to go try get Ciri. Like, I don't understand what's going on. But she does get very sidetracked by Denth. He's very charming and funny, and he has this running joke where he's like, nobody ever trusts mercenaries, blah, 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 whatever, whatever. And it's like everything he does is a little bit of a stand-up routine, which was entertaining. I really liked Dent at first. But Vivenna, once Lemix dies, he bequeaths his breath to her.
And she doesn't really want it because she sees it as pagan and she thinks that it's like an insult to her religion to take breath and use breath. But the mercenaries kind of make it clear to her, like, well, somebody's got to take it and he gave it to you. You may as well use it to show you're powerful. Like, you don't actually have to do anything, kind of a thing.
But even though she doesn't actually do anything, she can feel the power that it's given her. And there are later times where she has to like give up some breath and take on the breath again. And she can really notice like how the difference feels. And she ends up really relying on the breath a lot of times, not only just in her everyday life, but eventually when her life is put in danger, she's like, actually, I do want to use this power. I thought that I was above it. I thought I was too devout and religious to use it. But like when it's a life or death situation and this is the thing that will save me, I want to be able to use and understand the breath. And so her journey with her power, I thought was really interesting.
It was interesting to me, too, how she feels about the lifeless, in particular Claude, because that's kind of the first one that she has interactions with. She's really disgusted by the concept of using someone's body to awaken it at first, and she thinks it's, again, pagan. She thinks it's terrible to take a body and put breath in it so that you can control it. And that's something that Idrins believe. They just find that offensive that Hallandren does this, and they have literally armies of lifeless who they control. And Claude, in particular, being the first one that Vivenna kind of interacts with, she's just like really grossed out by him. He makes her uncomfortable, and the thing about them is you can't really sense them moving like you can other things. So because she has so much breath, she can kind of feel other people as they're moving around her. But lifeless work a little differently, so Claude can kind of sneak up on her and scare her, and that makes her uncomfortable, which I think is fair. But they get into this situation where they're being attacked by a group of people. I don't really remember why, but Claude ends up protecting her. And in that moment, she realizes that while Claude is not human, there is kind of a soul there.
Yeah, and he definitely has some humanity.
Which, how did you feel about this? Like the lifeless in general, the humanity that they do or don't have. I kind of felt, I don't know how I felt about it.
Well, I felt a little bit conflicted about it once it was revealed, the fact that there was any level of kind of awareness of like what was going on made it seem less like they were kind of tools to be used, which is what I initially thought was happening, when in reality it's a little bit more of an enslavement. And that, like, obviously I didn't love, but it was kind of a revealing of the way that the power worked from how it was represented before.
I thought it was interesting because it seems offensive to take someone's body and reanimate it for your own bidding, essentially. But I try to put myself in their position where that's like normalized to them, and I struggled with that because it just felt weird to me that it was so normal.
Yeah, I mean, know. Morally, I do think it's bad. I don't like it. But yeah, it's interesting. One question I was going to ask you is, when we're thinking about the lifeless, do you think of them as like as tools or as like connected to their former selves?
Oh, that's such a hard question.
Because in a way it's kind of similar. The gods in Hallandren, which we should definitely talk about more, but they were regular people and then they died, and now their like breath and their life has come back, but they were reanimated on their own, whereas the lifeless are kind of reanimated to be used as tools. Is that like the right understanding?
I think so. I think I had a hard time picturing them as human or as like having some humanity just because of the way they were described. And so they felt more to me like tools and less like people who were enslaved. But it's hard because there are moments where Claude kind of looks like he knows that he's done something good, or he knows that he's saved the situation, and then it gets much trickier for me because it's like he's acting in a way that is human, but they feel that he's not human. So I feel like they're tools, mostly because that's easier for me as a reader, because I think it's morally quite gross.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about moral grossness, I don't think Denth and Tongfa and Jules are the pinnacles of morality in this book, because they are the ones primarily who we see using this lifeless Claude, because Denth and Tongfa and Jules are revealed to not really be working for Vivenna and be working to help Vivenna. They have actually kidnapped Vivenna, and they're just taking her along with them while they do the other things for the people that they're actually working for. And Vivenna, they said, would be easier to kidnap if she didn't understand that she had been kidnapped. And so they've been like playing along with this ruse that they're really trying to help her and that she has hired them when in reality she is there against her will.
Yes, and they torture and kill our young friend Parlin, which is how this is kind of revealed to her because she finds his body.
Uh-huh.
And at this time, Dent and Tonkfa and Jules are all kind of like, well, we've been telling you this whole time, you can't trust a mercenary. And it turns out this silly little humor is actually just them being like, you really shouldn't trust us. We actually are not trustworthy people.
Because they're not. Before this, Vivenna had been kidnapped by somebody else and taken away from Dent and Tonkfa and Jules. And then when she escapes that person and comes back to them to be like, hey, I don't know what happened. Like, I'm here to you guys again. I'm so relieved to be with my friends again. In the time that she's been gone, that's when they tortured and killed Parlin. And so she comes to them and Dent is like, how did you figure out that we kidnapped you? You ran away. And then eventually he's like, oh, wait a second. You didn't know that we kidnapped you. I just revealed that to you. It was whiplash.
I was not prepared for the reveal that they were not trustworthy. I thought that the humor was just, I thought it was fun. I enjoyed it. And then it turns out that Tongfa's been like torturing animals in the basement, and that just really turned things around.
This was shocking to Vivenna and shocking to me. I also really liked Dent. I thought he was funny, so the reveal of him not being great was unfortunate.
I will say too, it felt very, very dark in comparison to the rest of the book, because while there is the like impending possible war, I do feel like the story, because of the humor that the characters have and like series sarcasm, it feels pretty light. I feel. And then there's this really, really dark scene where Tonkfa is torturing and murdering animals in the basement, and then humans, we find out too. So that was rough.
It really does mark a tonal shift in the book, because after that as well, when Vivenna escapes from them again, she is living on the street and trying to make her way in Hallandren all by herself after, finding out that her close friends, or who she viewed as her only friends, kidnapped her and murdered her friend and tortured her friend. And now she's all by herself, like starving on these dirty city streets that she doesn't really know how to navigate, being a cushy princess. Really, anyone I feel like would have a hard time navigating it. The level of filth and moral depravity and lack of food or water or shelter was tough. I was really picturing it like Les Mis. Like Anne Hathaway stumbling through the streets in Les Mis. That was kind of the vibe.
That's very apt. And something interesting while she's stumbling through the streets, because she has this breath still that was given to her, she stands out as being brighter than everyone else on the street. So she has to put her breath like in storage, essentially, in an old shawl, because you can put it into an object like we talked about. And so she carries this shawl around with her so that she does not present as brighter in the streets as other people, because that makes her a target to be attacked or pickpocketed or what have you. Once again, the colors come into play in such a way that it has to be hidden as best you can. Like you have this power, but you can't let other people see it, particularly when she's in hiding, living on the streets. And we find out later, there's a bounty on her that Dent and Tonkfa have put out, so she has to do her very best to blend in, and the best way to do that is to not reveal that she has this breath that she could use to awaken objects to help her. So it's very interesting. She's in a tough spot.
A tough spot. There are times in these few chapters where she thinks about turning to sex work because she has so little money and she hasn't eaten in days and she's so weak. And there's this one scene where she knows a business that will feed her if she brings them a certain amount of coins, and she has like just a little bit less than she needs, and so they won't give her any food, but she's too weak to go get more. And it's just a really, really bleak situation, which she is eventually saved from by this man named Vasher.
And his talking sword.
And his talking sword, yes. I know this book came way before we read Servant of Earth, but this reminded me of the talking sword in Servant of Earth.
I thought of the exact same thing, and I love the talking sword in Servant of Earth, so I was very happy to see another one.
I'm always happy to see a talking sword. But Vasher used to know Denth, and
Mm-hmm.
Denth had spoken about Vasher and talked about him as being a person who had betrayed him. And Vivenna didn't really fully know the story of what went down between them, but she just knew Vasher as a bad guy. But now, knowing that Denth was the real bad guy, Vasher all of a sudden looks a lot more trustworthy. So Vasher ends up teaming up with Vivenna and they move forward together.
And he does save her. She's basically at a point where she's caught in a sickness on the street and she's really at the end of what her body can handle, and which is part of why she's entered into like a delirium. She doesn't really know what's going on. But Vasher's there to save the day, and he has, I would say, more power when it comes to awakening things. He uses objects in a lot more savvy way than other
Hmm.
people do, which has made him a very good spy. And he's very good at getting into places without being seen or heard because he'll awaken different objects and basically knock people out so that he can, go do his spy shit.
Vasher's
And
very cool.
Vasher's great. I love Vasher. And the sword, Nightblood, is his trusty companion who has this like thirst for death, I would say, but at the same time doesn't seem evil necessarily. Like they seem like they're kind of the good guys fighting in the dark, trying to, we don't know what they're trying to do at first. But Nightblood is the only awakened object that like speaks. The lifeless don't speak. Different, animals obviously don't speak. The shawl doesn't talk to Vivenna. So it's very unique that Vasher has this object that is able to communicate with him. I don't know. I mean, it's not
Hmm.
actually talking. It's not like it has a
Yeah, like
mouth.
a psychic communication. Yeah, and the other thing that's unique about Nightblood is that most of the time metal cannot be awakened. Vasher and one of his companions a long time ago, this woman who was related to Denth and is related to this supposed betrayal between Denth and Vasher, she figured out how to make the metal, the thing that had never been alive, come alive. And so when it was created, it was given this one command to destroy evil. And they were like, this is great. This can't possibly be misinterpreted. We're going to tell this sword that your goal is to destroy evil. But what they didn't account for was the fact that this piece of metal didn't really understand the concept of good and evil and like the concept of morality. So the sword all the time just wants to kill things and destroy things. And Vasher has to kind of talk it down and be like, no, we don't need to kill those people right now. And the sword will say, well, isn't that getting in the way of your goals? That's evil. If it's not what you want, then it's evil. Let me kill it. So it's kind of comedic, actually.
It is, and I feel like it was probably maybe meant to be a little darker than I took it because I found it very humorous. But the whole concept is very interesting to me because we find out later why the sword can communicate psychically and why it has these seeming emotions about wanting to kill things. And I just thought that that was such a cool twist that Vasher has this object. And not only is it like when he tells, I don't know, for example, he tells his shirt sleeves at one point, like, protect me. And they do that. But then at the end, they just, turn back into shirt sleeves. And this is something that's almost like his friend, like a
Hmm.
companion that he travels with. We find out later Denth and Tonkfa like are scared of this sword. They want it gone. Like the idea of it is appalling to them. They throw it into the sea where it manages to capture the attention of a passing sailor. And Nightblood is saved and then kills the sailor who saved it. So it's all kind of, it's complex, but but like you were saying, the concept of good and evil is so uncommon or like not something that a sword can comprehend. So it's just cool to see how that is interpreted and how that helps along the way and kind of how it hinders the story as well.
Yes. So Vivenna and Vasher are on their way to the kingdom. I feel like we should take a
Finally.
yeah, finally. I feel like we should
Sorry.
take Oh, and Vivenna finds out from Vasher that all of her meetings with the different people where Denth and Tongfa and Jules were taking her to be like, here's the princess, you're gonna convince them not to go to war, actually was working more in favor of the war effort than in favor of quashing the war. So that's not
Yes.
ideal. She's not feeling great about that. But now she's finally gotten to the palace, and I feel like we should take a quick detour to talk about the gods because
Yes.
they're the political body of Hallandren, and whether or not enough gods vote to go to war will determine whether or not they end up going to war with Hallandren. And we've been primarily following a god named Lightsong. So of the perspectives in this book, there's a Ciri perspective, there's a Vivenna perspective, and then there's the Lightsong perspective. And Lightsong is a god who was once a regular person and then came back to life, died and then came back to life. And he knows now that he is a god and that he is powerful, and the subjects of the kingdom give him their breaths so that he can continue living. But he doesn't really know like who he was, and he's very curious about who he was, and he follows whatever instincts he has that will kind of clue him in to like what job he worked and who was important to him. He's been having dreams of this one girl that he thinks is important, but he doesn't really know.
Part of the thing with the gods is that when they come back to life, while they are alive, unlike the lifeless who are given breath, they can't remember their life before. It's something that's kind of kept from them. So Lightsong knows that he's been a god for 5 years, but he doesn't know what happened before that. And over the 5 years, he kind of builds this persona that Lightsong is uninterested in anything. He's lazy. He doesn't care about anything. He's just
like always
not invested.
joking.
Yes, he's like the unserious god that nobody really believes when he says things because it's always a joke, it's sarcasm, whatever. He becomes interested, becomes fixated on an incident that takes place at another one of the gods' palaces, and that makes him go down this journey of who he was before. He thinks maybe he was a detective of some kind. Nobody can tell him, even though there are people around him who know who he was before and what he did. They are not allowed to tell the gods who they were before. So it's just something that, like, the priests to the gods know, but they can't say who you were before or why you were awakened or anything like that.
He becomes fixated on this incident, and in his researching this incident, he keeps being approached by Blushweaver, who is another god or goddess, and she is determined to make the war happen. So she is kind of trying to campaign with the different gods to try to get them on her side. But more than that, she's trying to gather the passcodes so that she can unlock the lifeless armies that different other gods have, so that she can have control of the majority of the lifeless army. And so then no matter how people vote, she will kind of be the one to decide whether or not they go to war, because she actually has the power.
Which is a pretty clever plot when you think about it, because that puts you in such a position to do whatever you want or decide how the war goes if the war happens. And she does it so smoothly in the way that she convinces other gods and goddesses to give her their command codes, passcodes, whatever you want to call them. She, for whatever reason, believes that he is the god that she needs to make this happen. He, all the while, is like, I don't think you really need me. I don't really understand. Like, I'm not the right person for this. And the incident that we're talking about that he becomes fixated on along the way is that somebody breaks into one of the goddesses' homes and somebody is killed along the way. And the incident is kind of alarming to the goddess, as you would expect, because someone, breaks into her home and murders one of her people, and it's very frightening. But after that, it kind of gets brushed under the rug. Like, nobody really wants to talk about it. It's kind of, it's fine. We just overreacted. Like, don't worry about it. So everything's okay. But Lightsong doesn't believe that. And this kind of marks a turning point, I thought, in his personality, because he's like, I have to figure this out. Something's not adding up. Why are we all being so secretive about this person who died? Like, it's wrong that somebody died and we're acting like it doesn't matter. And this is all very frustrating to Blushweaver, who just wants Lightsong to shut up and give her codes. So, although they do flirt a lot, so maybe I shouldn't say she wants him to shut up, but
They do flirt a lot, but it doesn't seem like serious.
I feel like we're getting to the point where we need to talk about the reveals.
Yeah, we need to talk about their... Ooh, okay, that's exciting. Let's jump back to Ciri and Sesebron then, because they've kind of hatched this plan that on the day where they're going to vote whether or not to go to war, they are going to address the people, address the kingdom, because everybody's going to gather together while the gods vote, and Ciri is going to reveal to everybody that Sesebron does not have a tongue because nobody knows, and kind of reveal the level of control that the priests have over him, and he'll be able to speak out or not literally speak out against the war, but she will be able to speak out against the war with his authority and blessing, like standing next to her. However, on the day when they are going to do this, the priests grab Ciri before she's going to go out to the people, and they're like, "Oh, Ciri, you should not be going out in your delicate condition. We need to keep you safe and protected and in this room where nobody can see you while you are being a vessel." And Ciri's like, "What are you guys talking about? I'm not pregnant." But even though she might not be pregnant, the people don't know that. So the priests can just say that she is pregnant and stop her from interacting with anybody.
And what's even wilder about that is that we come to find out that the God King cannot have children. The whole line of God Kings is actually a baby that has been reawakened at the time that it's like time to pass on to the next generation, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically these babies are taken and planted as the next king, even though they have no actual relation to the actual God King, who is unable to have children. So there is literally no way Ciri could be pregnant. But the general public does not know that.
It's all one big ruse. The whole
It's
system.
wild. We're
The
talking
whole
Wizard of
system.
Oz.
And every like mother of God Kings for generations has just kind of been hidden away for 9 months, and then all of a sudden a baby appears, but it was obviously not her baby. It is a baby taken from someone in the kingdom. And so she finds out that the reason that the priests have been so adamant about her having an heir is that they have had a kid in mind that they're, or a baby in mind that they're going to plant, and she needs to appear pregnant sooner than later so that the timing matches up.
Which is all really quite disturbing in terms in terms of Ciri's body and the way that she's being used. And also, not that it would be okay at any age, but she's only like 18. She's quite young, and this is all a lot that gets thrust on her to take on, and it's nothing that she's been prepared for, to the point that when she first is there, the people in Hallandrin are kind of like, she must be pretending to be this unaware. There's no way she really doesn't know. She must be such a good actress that she's playing dumb, when the reality is she just has no idea because she was not trained to take on this position like her older sister was. And so on top of learning kind of the mannerisms of being in a palace and the lifestyle of being a queen, she's finding out that 75% of it is a lie anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it adds another layer to, before we were talking about how Sisebron would just watch her like kneel on the ground, and that he didn't really understand how like making babies worked, and
Yep.
Ciri wasn't like going to explain it to him right away. I think that like adds another layer to this whole situation as well, because the priests didn't have to tell or explain to Sisebron how to produce an heir, because they knew that he wouldn't be able to have an heir anyway, and they didn't really care if an heir was produced because they had one already. So it was like the whole charade that they were putting on, where she was bouncing and moaning and whatever that they were doing, really was for nothing. Like I don't know why they were like, you have to have sex with each other, because it wouldn't have mattered. It's all just for appearances. And then when they were spying on her while she was like kneeling naked on the ground, that feels now like that was just humiliating. They were just trying to embarrass her because they knew that it didn't matter if they had sex.
It just turns into this like perversion, because, which, I mean, it's not like it's not kind of creepy and pervy in the first place, but they have their reasons at the beginning, in that, first of all, they want to make sure she doesn't try to murder the God King, which is fair, I would say.
Sure.
But later on, as they're aware that, like you said, it doesn't matter whether they have sex or not, like, why are you peeking in peepholes to see what's going on? Why are you listening at the wall? What does it matter? You're going to fake it all anyway.
All of that is to say that they lock Ciri away so that she cannot address the kingdom of people. They also have locked Sisebron away, which we find out from Lightsong in the audience, because Lightsong is like, oh, the most powerful God King, we're about to go to war, and he can't even be bothered to come like make a vote about whether or not we go to war, because his vote will veto all other votes as the leader. but he has decided not to show up on this most important of days. But then it's also revealed around this time that the priests are actually not all real priests. A lot of them are planted kind of not necessarily spies, but just like people who are working for a different group of people. So within the palace, not only are there Hallandren servants, there are also Pankal servants. So they are kind of a different ethnic group, a different kingdom, a different culture. Is that kind of how you understood it?
Yes, and their culture is considered lower in the hierarchy than Hallandren. Like, they are not allowed, for example, to be Ciri's direct handmaidens until she requests them because they're not considered high enough in the class that they can directly serve the queen. They can work in the palace, but they can't be that close to the royalty.
So her most trusted advisor, Bluefingers, is revealed to actually not be a great guy. He is really well, he betrays Ciri. I guess in terms of like the morality of these different levels of countries, it becomes more complicated, but he definitely betrays Ciri specifically because he has been really trying to get Hallandren and Idris to go to war. The thought is that if Hallandren and Idris go to war, they will both be weakened, and then it will be easier for Pankal to achieve more power.
And nobody suspects them of pulling the strings or trying to make this happen because they're considered a smaller, more peaceful nation. Nobody really even thinks about them. And the people in the palace are there, but they're not really noticed that much, I wouldn't say. They're kind of extraneous in the way that they're treated. So nobody thinks that the person who's maybe sowing discord among the streets of Hallandren and Idris would be this third party.
Yes, because the priests seem in general to be actually on Ciri's side. It's just that there are so many of these Pankal plants.
Yes, and she actually starts to mistrust the priests because Bluefingers tells her very early on, like, you need to be careful, don't trust anybody. And she thinks he means the other priests. And so, like you were talking about with the betrayal, we come to find out that actually Ciri could have trusted the other priests. But because Bluefingers was able to kind of get into her mind immediately when she arrived at the palace, she goes with what he says and thinks he's trying to be helpful. And then we come to find out Bluefingers is actually the priest that she should not have trusted.
This betrayal was really a mirror of the Denth Vivenna betrayal. Again, he warned her early on, like, don't trust people, and it turns out that he was the one not to be trusted.
But we do get one trustworthy relationship, I thought, which was Lightsong and Ciri. Even though they don't interact a ton, Lightsong does kind of go out of his way to be nice to her, and he takes her under his wing a little bit, I would say, in that he kind of tries to teach her the ways of the palace and helps her learn more about the history of Hallandren. And he is one who thinks that she's so naive and has been truly put into a situation that she was not prepared for, that he doesn't want anyone to take advantage of her. I just think it's a credit to him that even though he has built up this personality of being kind of a goof, he doesn't really care, nothing matters to him. This in particular is important to him, that he protects Ciri in a way. And we find out later when Lightsong remembers his past, which we can get into more detail, but he died in his former life saving his niece. I felt like that was another mirror in the way that he tries to protect Ciri, though it's not necessarily intentional on his part because he doesn't remember his former life. He dies to protect his niece, and then again dies helping protect Ciri later on in the book.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I didn't even think about that as parallel, but that's a good thing to notice.
I just love Lightsong. He was my favorite character.
Yeah, that was a tough death, but I admire that Sanderson is willing to kill off characters because it really emphasizes the stakes of the book and just how much this all matters.
Cough, cough, Sarah J. Maas. Cough, cough.
I know. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I am really excited for ACOTAR 6, though. So
yeah, I
I
am very
mean,
excited. I expect no one to die, but I'm excited.
nobody's gonna die, nothing's gonna matter, but we're gonna have a fun time. It's probably gonna
Nobody.
be overly, oh my gosh, in the interview where she was saying that she wanted to write like thousands of pages book, but that the binding literally would not hold together, and so that she's writing multiple books, but they're supposed to be read as one book. Did you get to that part of
Uh,
the interview?
no, I haven't watched it yet.
It just made me think about how our big criticism of A Court of Silver Flames was that it should have
Mm-hmm.
been edited down, that it was like
Deeply.
way too long, and that so much of it was superfluous fluff. And I was like, oh, this feels like it's going to be a problem with these upcoming ones. So I'm a little bit nervous for that, but at the same time, I am kind of excited. Also excited to reread some of the ACOTAR books leading up to it,
Yeah.
just to kind of refresh my memory. But Russell was telling me the other day that he started reading Court of Thorns and Roses, or he started listening to it,
No way.
and he said he likes it more than he expected to, or that it wasn't really what he was expecting. And so I'm very curious to see how that goes.
I am intrigued by
I
how that
right? Yeah,
that opinion will evolve as
I
he's
know.
reading.
Yes. Anyway, sorry. We can refocus now on the book that we're talking about.
Bringing it back to Sanderson, who can
Mhm.
write thousands page long books, and it works, I think. Except for maybe in The Way of Kings. Anyway, bringing it
That
back.
that's his like only thousands page book. I think that's the only one that I've read that goes over 1,000 pages. His other ones
Yeah.
are, a nice tidy 400, 500, 300.
I guess I read the like mass market paperback size, so they were
Oh,
like twice as long
I
as
see. Yeah, I
the
guess this one's
others.
like 600 some.
Did you love The Way of Kings? Please let us know.
I
Just kidding.
I feel like I need to
Don't add that.
clarify that I liked Way of Kings.
I feel like we both should clarify that we both read Way of Kings upon recommendation from our significant others.
And they really
and
like it.
and they loved it. So
But okay, Russell loved Way of Kings. He's never read another Brandon Sanderson besides Way of Kings and now Words of Radiance, which he's reading right now. And I'm
yeah.
just saying, maybe if he read the other ones, he would also like the other ones more, like I did. Wait, has Kai read other Brandon Sandersons besides Way of Kings, Words of Radiance, that series?
He's read that series. He has not. He like owns them all because he loves Brandon Sanderson, but I don't think he's read the full Mistborn um, series, which I liked better, as you know.
Has he read the first Mistborn?
I don't think so.
Because I was gonna say, if he has, it makes me wonder if, like, whatever your first series is, if it's Mistborn or if it's Way of Kings, you end up liking whichever one you read first. So I don't
I'll
know.
ask him.
Yeah,
I
I
know
would
he's
be very
told me, I just
curious
can't
to know.
remember.
I did like Way of Kings, just to
Way of
clarify again.
Way of Kings was good, just not great.
But Warbreaker was great.
Warbreaker was great. Anyway, bringing it back.
Anyway,
Lightsong dies.
Lightsong is dead.
Flash forward in the Ciri situation, we find out that the high priests are trying to keep her safe, as we said earlier on. They want her and the God King actually to be safe, even though they have lied to both of them about the baby and all these other things. They don't want them to die. Like, they're not out here trying to actively kill these people. They get kidnapped anyway by the pawn call. Well, taken, I guess, not kidnapped. They get captured by them.
Yeah.
And as they're taken, we find out that Lightsong has also been captured, Blush Weaver's been captured, and Lightsong's high priest Larimer has also. So all these people are captured. It's not looking good for our heroes. Lightsong realizes when he's in this situation, this is why he was brought back for this moment, because he finally sees that the God King does not have a tongue, and we find out that the gods, when they are reawakened, are given the opportunity to one time save somebody's life or heal them in some way. So Lightsong reaches out his hand and heals the God King, who now has his tongue and the full use of his power.
And somehow, like, full understanding of how to use his power. There is no real, like, learning curve, such as Vivenna had to go through to be able to use her breath. He kind of, I think, because of the sacrifice that Lightsong made, not only has his full tongue and full power, he also fully understands how to use it.
And he arrives in, like, the throne room right before Bluefingers is about to murder Ciri because she's going to become basically she has to die so that the pawn call can blame Hallandren for killing the queen. So Bluefingers is going to kill her. And God King walks in and says, "You will not touch her. You will stop." Like the first words that he says, and the whole throne room is just like collapsing around them because of how powerful he is. And it's a wonderful, wonderful scene.
It's a wonderful scene. It's also funny too, like we're viewing him through Ciri's eyes and she goes, "Ooh, his voice is deeper than I expected it to be."
At this point, they are deeply in love.
Yeah, they're in love. It's very sweet.
I love them. They're so cute.
Yeah, but that was really a hero moment, and it's at that point where we get the reveal of how Lightsong gave his life to heal Sisebron. And yeah, it's a big dramatic scene, very satisfying scene. I really liked how this whole thing went down.
Good build up and a good reveal. I was very
Good payoff.
happy. Yeah, I felt like it was worth it when we got there. I did wonder what would happen with the God King, if he would ever be able to speak. Oh, that's my blanket. Or what would happen. So I would have liked the story just as much if he didn't have the ability to speak, if his tongue had not come back. But I did think that the fact that it did was not something I was expecting, which made it all the better, because at no point did I think to myself, maybe someone will be able to heal his tongue.
I feel like maybe that should have been on my mind, but it also was not for me.
Never crossed my mind.
At this point, we also have Vivenna and Vasher reach Ciri and Sisebron and Bluefingers and everything that's happening there. And it's revealed that Vasher has been alive for a very long time. And he was also alive when these different statues around the kingdom were placed. There's this legend around this thing called Kalad's Phantom, which are, he was an ancient god, and the Phantom are this like huge group of lifeless that can be used if you have the correct phrase to unlock them. There are these statues around the city that are encased in stone, but Vasher reveals to everybody that he is so old and he knows, I hope I'm not explaining this wrong, he knows that there are human remains inside of the stone, so they are able to be commanded as lifeless and be used as an army. And so he gifts this army to Sisebron to be able to use to prevent a war from happening.
This, I will say, I found disturbing. This felt more torturous isn't really the word I want, but insulting to people.
Well, it kind of depends on, like, when they say human remains, do they mean that there's like an entire corpse covered in stone, or is it like a couple of is it like a finger bone that's inside?
I thought it was like a whole body, because the statue is encased around it in the same way that like a lifeless moves with the whole body. I think
Sure.
I pictured it as the whole body, and I found that disturbing. Which, I mean, it's not necessarily any different than the way the lifeless are enslaved, I guess, if we're saying that they're enslaved with their humanity, something about it just felt a lot different to me. I don't know why.
Vasher gives the information to Sisebron, and in doing so gives him like a lot of power, because not only is he now the person with the most breath who has the most like physical power, he also is able to command this huge army. And so it does kind of guarantee that Hallandren, because Sisebron does not want to go to war, will not go to war.
Which is very heroic. Although I would like to read a fantasy book where one of the main heroines is not in love with a man hundreds of years her senior, but that's just my personal
Wait,
thing.
who's hundreds of years? Who's senior?
Literally, like, the entire ACOTAR series.
No. No, but in this book, like, Sisebron and Ciri, they're pretty close in age, aren't they?
He's been around the block for a while, I think. I think he's quite a bit older, but...
Really? Wait.
Yeah, let's Google how old he is. He's not young. He's been around a while. How old?
Sisebron, the God King in Warbreaker, is 50. As a returned, he possesses immense breath, maintains the physical appearance of a man in his early 20s.
And Vasher is over 300 years old.
Okay, but Vasher and Vivenna were not in love.
But there's some undertones.
There's
some rumblings.
There was not any like certainty at the end of the book that like this is a couple.
I felt like it was.
Oh.
I felt like it was implied that they were together. But all I'm saying is the thing with fantasy is that it seems to be a common thread that the dude is super old and the girl is 18.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're not wrong.
it's
I feel like we've
it's a
had this conversation about like fairy years and dog years before.
yes, we have, and
But
I bring it back every time. I feel strongly about this. They can be similar ages. They could be young fairies. They could be young kings with
young
power from
returned king.
yesteryear. I don't know. I just. Why do they have to be old?
I don't
I
know.
don't get it.
I don't know. At
Anyway.
least Sebron appears in his early 20s.
Yes, that bothered me less because he isn't as old, and I felt like, especially with him mentally being younger,
Hmm.
I felt like by the time the end of the book, they were at least like mentally and emotionally kind of in the same place. So
Hmm.
that was less creepy to me. But
One thing that I really loved about this book is the like evolution of Vivenna and Ciri's characters and the way that they
mhm.
both kind of started on opposite ends of the personality spectrum at the beginning, where Ciri was this free spirit. She didn't like care a lot about the rules. She wasn't being raised to be this like political pawn in the way that Vivenna was, whereas Vivenna was very polite and modest and devout and buttoned up. And eventually, towards the end of the book, as their roles shift, their personalities and like the things that they valued started to shift as well. And in some ways, although Ciri never becomes quite as like modest and devout as Vivenna was at the beginning of the book, she does become sort of a model princess and a model queen in a way that Vivenna would have been, whereas Vivenna becomes this kind of nomad person who knows that she will never be able to live kind of the royal life that she had anticipated living. And so in a way their personalities kind of swap and they become more like one another throughout the story, even though they're not really interacting with each other, just like the paths that their lives take. And I thought that was super thought provoking and I really enjoyed it.
Loved that too, and I thought it was fun at the end when they see each other again for the first time, how they notice how the other one has changed. Like Vivenna notices that Ciri has started to hold herself up straighter and she's standing, she's not causing trouble. She's there, she has a presence, like a very queenly presence about her. And Ciri, meanwhile, notices, like, oh, Vivenna's wearing pants. Like, that's totally out of the blue. She would never change out of her dresses and her formal wear. And I thought it was cool just to see them observe each other and recognize the changes, even though it's like before they've even talked to each other. I did laugh though, because at the end, Vivenna, when she's kind of coming to the realization that she couldn't live in the palace again, which I think is fair, she makes a comment about how, like, well, I can't go home ever again. I can't see my father again. And I thought, is that true? I don't know. I don't know why you think you can't ever go home again. Your father didn't like disown you or send you off. You left willingly. And he thinks that maybe you got in trouble because we found out Denth murdered everyone who came looking for you. Like, it would actually probably be good if you let him know you're alive.
Oh my gosh.
Like, why can't you go home? I don't understand. Send a note at least, carrier
Let him
pigeon.
know
I
that you're
don't
alive, yes.
just he's probably pretty worried about you.
The other thing too that Vivenna notices about Ciri is that Ciri has been able to keep her hair color one color and that she has it under control, which was another detail that we haven't really talked about. But both Vivenna and Ciri, they have this ability to change their hair color, or sometimes it changes with their moods. And this has to do with like some remnant of godly power that is what made them be from the royal line to begin with. But it's something that they have to kind of work to control because it gives away their thoughts and feelings and emotions, particularly to people who have a lot of breath, because they can really notice slight color changes more than other people would be able to.
And this is how Vivenna gets people to trust her as she's going along on these trips, first with Denth and later with Vasher, when they're talking to people about Vivenna unknowingly like feeding the war, and then later going back and being like, I didn't mean to do that, please don't go to war. um, she'll have to prove that she is in fact the princess by showing her hair and making it change color, because it's called the Royal Locks, and nobody else has that ability, so it's not something you can fake to just pretend that, oh, I have a real princess. You would have to actually be royalty from Idris to have this power. So
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was fun. It was not something I would have thought of as like a character trait or something for the royal family, but I thought it was fun that when Ciri's mad, for example, her hair turns red
Yeah.
and she gets upset, or when they get embarrassed, their hair turns red. And it shows Ciri's growth in particular, I thought, because she learns how to control her emotions and kind of lie to the people around her a little bit better. And there's like a scene where the priests are watching her super closely to check her hair for color changes, and by this point she's learned how to control it, which gives her more power in the palace because she can't be controlled as easily. So I thought for Ciri's growth in particular, it was a cool little add-in.
All right. That's all I wanted to talk about. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
I feel like we've talked about so much, and this book has so much that even talking about a lot, I feel like, dear listener, if you go read the book, you will still discover a lot. And for that reason, I really recommend it because it is so dense in a great way.
I loved this. I think this might be my favorite Brandon Sanderson. Either this one
Hot take.
or the second Mistborn. Well of Ascension.
I don't
I also
remember those
loved
as well.
Well of Ascension.
I think I loved that one too, but Tress of the Emerald Sea is my favorite.
That one's also good. Very different tonally than the other ones, but still good.
It was a happy, happy day when I found the like custom color paged copy. It's
Beautiful.
a prized possession.
Beautiful. Okay, well then that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much, listener, for listening. Don't forget to follow us here on Spotify so that you don't miss an episode. Rate us 5 stars. That really helps us out. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok. Send us an email at agooddayforbookclub@gmail.com. And until next time, happy reading.
Happy reading! This is my Way of King's face. Just kidding.
Did you hate Way of Kings?
No, it was fine. I feel like we need a Way of Kings outtake reel.
I think the thing about Way of Kings is that it did take me like a year to read.
See, that was my struggle as well. I picked it up, I put it down, I said I don't know that I would ever need to pick it up again.
How many stars did you give Way of Kings?
Let me look.
You're gonna say 5, and I'm gonna be like, what?
I want to say like a solid 3.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through all my friends and following because lots of people have read, and you gave it, Chloe.
What did I give it?
On December 29th, 2022, you gave Way of Kings 5 stars.
Clearly, I was.
Would you like to go back and amend that?
Clearly, I was deeply smitten with my then boyfriend, now husband, to clarify.
This is going in the episode.
I can't believe Are you sure it was me?
I'm sure you gave. I'm looking. You're wearing the wedding dress. I know this is you.
I do not recall that.
That is so funny.
Okay, well, pretend I gave it 3.
Oh my god.
What did you give it?
That's a great question. I think. Oh, I gave it 4. In hindsight, I'd say.
Well, that's pretty generous.
3.5. Well, I never said I disliked it. I just said it was my least favorite Brandon Sanderson.
I feel like I need to read it again. Apparently, 2022 Chloe was a different person.